have been talking about the energy aspects of the pyramids a lot. And obviously we need technical engineering minds for that. Now in front of us today is Davor Jadrijevic, who is the electrical engineer, and he obtained his Master of Sciences in Physics. So he combines several different scientific disciplines in his mind, which is very interesting, and I encourage you to give him a warm welcome to this topic, exotic energy of pyramids.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you to my independent research of the energy from the pyramids. I try to research it from the scientific point of view, but I would like to present you some of the either speculation of mine or possibilities that which can be led to our next experiments. So, next slide please. We started with a structure that is triangular, that looks like a pyramid. Somebody says it's a hill, but you know it has construction material. It is a great geometric object, which has its property not only of the geometry, but orientation and the mass. And what first comes in our mind in this situation is that that could be a kind of either device or antenna, because the question would be, if there is some Asian civilization who built that, did it build it so large and big only for the purpose to manifest the power of the civilization, but could that be another more practical purpose, more economical, whatever, that justifies building of structure like that? Well, when we have a structure with a geometry, with some kind of relations between space and the material, which is built in layers in a manner that repeatedly follows a pattern either circular or alternating layers, one layer from the stone, clay, and so on. Then we can say it could use, or either it could be used to collect the environmental energy from the ground, from the outside. We don't know exactly where it comes from, but it could come from many places. And with the complex interaction of the material inside, please give me a slide, it could create a radiation of electromagnetic field with which Dr. Slobodan Mizrak has actually measured a few years, maybe 2 years ago. Next slide. And what we found from that, and we come to the conclusion that with the complex interaction of the magnetospheric and piezoelectric effects in the materials which consists of, in the materials from which a pyramid consists of, a wave could be created. A wave is a manifestation of energy stored in a built structure, which has a certain geometric, conductive, capacitive, and inductive properties, which could be obtained by carefully choosing the materials of the pyramid to build. The first theories were that it is a piezoelectric effect coming from the vibration on the ground. So we have let's say, macro earthquakes that happen all the time in the ground. Everything is vibrating in some way. And crystals, for example, quartz or something, if it is carefully aligned, can create electric field just from the mechanical acting on it. But it would be difficult to be built, because we should have to align all the crystals in the spiral structure around the pyramid, coming like a coil from bottom to the top. The simplest way to do it is to use a magnetostriction effect. This is a similar effect to the piezoelectric when you are using mechanical force to a material that has something like iron, nickel stuff that is magnetic. If you hit it with mechanical force, it will produce the magnetic fields. So mechanical forces, if they come just from above and resonate this thing as a nonlinear oscillator, I will explain it later, the oscillator, we will create the magnetic fields coming along the beam that you see above, and this is what we can measure with our instruments. The next slide. I was looking in my research, what can I find with the other cultures and the other pyramids? Do they have some documentation or something that we can use in order to explain? This is a Dendera temple in the Egypt, which has inscription and carving stones that could have interpretation of the device that is electrical. Next slide. This is a carving in a stone. Let's consider this is a structure like a bulb or something, and there are silhouettes or symbols of the figures like that, and a snake inside and some strange symbols here. Well, let's look about to the next slide. It is maybe more intuitive here, because one of the German museum have built a device, I mean, okay, replica, which of course nobody knows did it really look like that, but this is what we have seen on the picture. You have seen the bulb and some snakes, a box with something inside, and a couple of the batteries. This is about the batteries. You can have few metals, two metals and some kind of vinegar or whatever, and you can produce electricity. Next slide, please. I interpret this inscription like something like semantics. They have been used language of symbols in order to explain and document stuff. So we have several important symbols on here. We should probably not literally interpret it like that, but consider it as a lead or a guide to somebody who already knows the purpose of the device, in order just to not forget the main parts of it. So the first thing what we can see is the operator, which is normal human being standing at some safe place and looking how the device works. On the device we have some kind of a wiring going into the box, and the other silhouettes of the people are interesting. It is this one. Two people on the opposite direction could mean two polarities, plus or minus, of the electricity, some kind of a counter force which enables potential to be built between them. This figure here, as it stands on its larger place on the wire itself, could signify electric current that is flowing, and this is the symbol of the air. This symbol or silhouette here is some kind of animal, human-like, either a monkey or a lizard, whatever, equipped with two knives. So it could symbolize a danger to somebody who is not very informed on what it could be. So brute force doesn't work on this device. And what is most intriguing here is the symbol like that. This one, next slide, is a jet pillar. Jet pillar is a symbol used in pre-dynastic times in the ancient Egypt. Nobody really knows what did it represent initially. Later it was explained by the spine of Osiris or something. But I think that it should have some more technological meaning. This is the only symbol in this picture that looks that resembles very symbolic and very schematic, like we use it on the normal electrical engineering. So I was looking at that symbol in this time, in this way. Let's say we have some kind of a wave, and the wave could have some kind of a length. So the complete height of this structure or symbol is determined of one wavelength. And these four divisions here are indicating division of the wavelength by 4. And this is the quarter wave resonator, in my opinion, schematically shown as a symbol. Next symbol. The purpose of the quarter wave resonator is the main function of the antenna. This quarter wave resonator is able to store energy in form of electromagnetic vibration for a longer time. Okay, this time is microseconds or some milliseconds, but it can store it and build a standing wave inside of it, which has special properties. Special properties of the wave is that with large current and low voltage on the bottom, we can produce enormous electric field on the top. Resonator like that can influence other resonators not directly connected to electric field, electric source of power, and the other resonator will, due to the standing wave that is created in the space, start resonating as well. The other example is what happens when we don't have the correct frequency. Only the correct frequency creates quarter wave resonance. This is a half wave resonance, and this is no resonance here. Next slide. This is a probable description of how two jet pillars have been used as two resonators to transfer energy from one to another. So, in my opinion, this one should be the transmitter. There is a arm symbol symbolizing that they are meaning it seriously. Don't approach the device too close, away in the space. And this is a receiver. Some people or statues can then either utilize energy or whatever. I have done some Tesla wireless experiments, which actually gave me idea of all this about. On the next slide is my experiment when I have built a homemade lambda quarter wave resonator. This one is transmitter. In proximity of the transmitter, a lamp could be lit just by approaching the transmitter. No other wiring is needed. And this is the receiver. A lamp in the receiver can light if the receiver is grounded. As well grounded should be the transmitter too. They both are grounded by this radiator. But you can ground it anyhow. You don't need direct wiring in order for this to be lit. Next slide. This is the schematics of what it is actually. The generator, the coil of the transmitter, the capacitor. This is schematically shown as if the air becomes conductive in the presence of the wave. Actually, air doesn't get conductive at all. The real transmission is going through the ground. This is a reflection of conductivity in the ground. Next slide. What does it mean in our pyramids and our measurements from Dr. Mizek and others? I have took the spectrum of the Dr. Mizek's measurements. It contains a number of the peaks which are actually equally distant, but on the logarithmic scale it looks different. They are equally most. We are starting with some kind of frequency about 5 kilohertz, and then we have peaks, and then there are peaks about 26 point something, 32 point something. On the above is my reconstruction. What wave should create this spectrum? We have many possibilities how can we create the wave from the spectrum, but what is most obvious, we have the one carrier of the larger amplitude and low frequency, which corresponds to this frequency. And if the pyramid was taking or drawing energy from the environment or some kind of natural material, this is the prime source of energy in the pyramid. This low frequency, about 5 kilohertz. But what happens is probably the pyramid was damaged either by earthquakes or long age or whatever, that damage of the pyramid caused creation of other peaks as well. This is one of the possibilities why do we have other peaks. And another possibility is that they did it intentionally so. Maybe the other peaks are not created just by the damage, but by intention, in order to focus most of the energy to these peaks of the frequency that is not audible, 26 or high frequency, so that our devices can work quiet. We can normally not hear it, but they can use it, can be used as energy. Next slide. I have built a device for another experiment, running in 30 kilohertz approximately. This coil is about meter and 30-40 high, and there is a capacitor and ball going over and some kind of a geometry inside. And when I say, okay, 26 or 42 megahertz are in the range of capability of this device. So my first idea was, if I found a signal on the pyramid about 26 or 32, I can bring this device on the pyramid and it could receive the energy. If we have oscillating magnetic field coming from the above, and this magnetic field would create rotating electric field which would force the electrons to move, and if it does on the right frequency, a quarter wave, standing wave would be created along this structure. This coil here acts as a metamaterial to the wave, so a longer wavelength, about 10 kilometers or something, could be, okay, quarter of 10, 2.5, could be stored in this coil, and it is when it operates from external power. Let me show you a picture. If we can extract 1 watt from the pyramid approximately by having the signal like you've seen before, what would happen? On the next slide, a neon tube would be lit inside of the receiver, which is only grounded to the connection right there. This is from the experiment 50 meters from the transmitter. It has no other wirings than direct grounding. The transmitter has about 1 kilowatt of power. We can see it on the next slide. This is a transmitter. 1 kilowatt of power, no lamp inside because it will burn out. You can put lamps away from it few meters along, and it will light just like that. This is an extremely high electric field, creating and emanating radially from this antenna. Okay, radially, I mean some field lines are distorted in the nearby, but the other lines that shoot away, then they go as long as you can imagine, because this is electric field, it has no, it has infinite distance, no limit to the distance to this field. On the next slide, this is my antenna, which I wanted to check out, is there really present field like that? I mean, I didn't want to bring this big one antenna before I check the signal. Does it, would it work with the signal? I need to know in advance. This is a big field antenna with number of windings on in the circular direction. This antenna is sensitive to the magnetic field, and it is directionally sensitive. So magnetic field that comes perpendicular to the surface of the antenna would be detected by the antenna. If you twist it in 90 degrees direction, you should see reduction or no field, depending on the geometry of the field. I brought this antenna to Visoko, and on the next slide, just for the comparison, a different antenna has been used with Dr. Mizrak in order to measure the previous measurement. I must stress the point that it depends on the antenna and its geometry how would look like the signal and what it would be received. On the antenna, we are only receiving the electrical signals, which we can record in oscilloscope or whatever, but this electrical signal does not need necessarily to represent the external magnetic and electric fields that are acting on an antenna. So the geometry on the antenna matters much. But I thought, in my first opinion, that the circular antenna like that would get much larger signal, and it was built in with the assumption that we are looking for 30 kilohertz range approximately. Next slide. I placed my antenna on approximately the similar position which have been used with previous measurements, and this is about here on the top of the pyramid of the sun. On the tripod was mounted this antenna. I was as well walking around with the antenna in order to check the signal. But as we can see on the, I think, next slide, I get something different. I didn't get 30 kilohertz range, but sometimes on some places which are about 10 or 15 meters in the diameter, I have found the presence of the pulses. The pulse looked like this in my oscilloscope, and immediately from looking at that, we can see that the structure of pulse is not as simple. The pulse is not immediately driving the antenna to some maximum voltage and then slightly with exponential falling it down, but the signal starts to drive the antenna initially, then it falls down, drives it slowly, then it changes the phase somewhere here and starts to driving it again a little bit. This is about 128 kilohertz, a period of this, but it is not a constant frequency. As you see, changing of the frequency means phase means as well changing the frequency. I would ask our TEA operator that she tries to play this sound downshifted to the audible frequency. Okay. So you can see this first zzz is just a noise from the oscilloscope, but this spark is the signal. This is a pulse we are converted into something that is audible. So I went to the tunnel's Ravne. On the next slide, we can make a little next one to this. On the tunnel Ravne, this is a measurement about 75 meters from the entrance. And on this measurement you can immediately see very similar shape. Immediately the initially pulse starts running larger, changing on the phase and some kind of a tail. 75 meters from the Ravne tunnel is actually nearby the recently discovered object, which is 90 meters away, and my resolution of the locality is about 10 meters. So I can tell you that I can go to location about 10 meters long in Ravne tunnel and receive such pulse. Pulses come randomly between quarter of a second or something, comes the next one, or at maximum we can have the next pulse waiting about 10 seconds or so. So it comes quite often. It is usually like that, and sometimes there is a burst of several discharges. But let's see, let's hear first that one. Can we, this is this file, yes, right? Okay, you can see, play it again. It is a little bit stronger even. So, my first thinking is what could create a localized pulse like that? Why don't I measure it anywhere in the tunnels? Why are some locations specific? I tried to look it optically, but I had no idea what is different in the tunnels, because it is neither a room, not a megalith, just a passage. Next slide. So this is, okay, nothing on the tunnels, just in order to imagine a little bit, you know how it looks like. This is another pulse. This is another example that is found on crossing near the egg megalith. Okay, this is a crossing near the egg megalith. It is not actually near megalith, it is maybe some meters away. It is strongest on the place that is not a megalith. It is just a crossing, and it has a burst of the several pulses. Can we play this? That one? Aha. Okay. Oh, it is I have to apologize. The burst was the previous one, and this is only a clean pulse. Okay, a little bit file of, I misplaced the file names. But okay, this has been measured. So pulses are local. Pulses drive the antenna to some voltage. Let's look at the voltage approximately. Voltage is, this is 20 millivolts. This pulse was 12 millivolts, 20 millivolts. Previous slide, can we see? Can you see the previous slide? Or the next one? Can you switch to the next one? Okay, no, it doesn't matter. Actually, on the other slide which you have seen, there is a larger amplitude, about 100 millivolts. So my opinion was, if this pulse would last longer, I mean continuous, we would be able to at least light the neon bulb like you have seen on my experiment. As the pulse is short, this utilization is not possible. I mean, not possible, it would not work. But my interpretation is that the pyramid is either not using this energy. When I was about 2 months ago, it was between 20 of June, and that time the focusing of the pyramid did not happen. It did not take all these pulses together and convert it to the beam, but I have just seen the pulses. The pulses could be some kind of prime source of the energy. One pulse is nothing, but all the pulses in all the locations in the pyramid could make something. What energy can we expect from that? Well, the energy would not be like a power station like we have, maybe kilowatt, maybe 10 kilowatts at best when the pyramid was new. So the possible purpose of the pyramid would be a device that is capable of utilizing energy from the environment, but its prime function was probably not just generating the electricity for the distribution, which could have been done, but for the other purpose, either this pyramid could have been used like an antenna or for interstellar communications, because it has a longer wavelength and it has capability to separate electric from the magnetic fields, and this kind of electrical or let's say electrodynamical disturbance could travel to the longer distance. Well, we are still researching it. I came again these days with the antenna, slightly modified. So I removed the how can I say, foil, aluminium foil. This foil is used to little clean signal to shield electric field and get only magnetics. Now I see the continuous signal about 135 kilohertz, but it's quite weak. So we still are not very conclusive all about. No pulses now, continuous signal quite steady. This calls for larger, from more extensive, this calls up for more extensive development and research. My suggestion at first was to try to measure and locate exact source of the pulses or the signal, whatever it is. There is equipment called and the discipline in the there is a discipline called audiomagnetotellurics in the science which explores the soils. I forget the original name in English, never mind. Audiomagnetotelluric can tell us direction of the electric fields and the magnetic fields, because this device concurrently records it all to the 6 channels. So we will have some special data where it is and probably where to dig to find the real source. This is from my. This is all from me. I can thank you for your patience, and maybe we will see each other again in the aula to discuss more.